Welcome to another podcast in which we'll be talking about James Mahu's essay, Our Collective Reality. Sophia and Phil greet you from the microphone.
Hello to everyone from Phil.
Imagine discovering that trees have their own social network, a sophisticated underground communication system that's been operating for millions of years. What if this natural phenomenon could completely change how we think about consciousness and reality itself?
That's fascinating, Sophia, and I'm guessing there's more to this story than just chatty trees.
Oh, Phil, absolutely there is. Scientists have recently uncovered that trees communicate through what they call a mycorrhizal network, essentially fungal threads that connect root systems. They share resources, send warning signals about threats, and even nurture their offspring through this network.
So we're talking about a kind of natural internet that existed long before humans came along?
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. This discovery is just one piece of a much larger puzzle about consciousness and intelligence in our universe. If trees can create these intricate communication networks, what does that tell us about the nature of intelligence itself?
Hmm. You're suggesting that maybe our traditional view of intelligence being confined to individual organisms is too limited.
Precisely. Think about it. We're finding evidence of interconnected intelligence everywhere we look. From quantum entanglement at the subatomic level to these tree networks, to the way birds in a flock coordinate their movements perfectly without a central controller.
That's making me think about those philosophical questions about whether we're living in some kind of simulation or cosmic prison. How does this interconnectedness relate to that?
Well, that's where this gets really fascinating. Some people argue that if we're all so interconnected, it could be evidence of some controlling force, like we're all just parts in a giant machine. But there's a completely different way to look at it.
Tell me more about that alternative perspective.
Instead of seeing interconnectedness as a form of control, what if it's actually evidence of something far more profound? Consider this. Every level of life shows some form of communication. There's this universal language of survival that runs through all species, something that can't be contained or suppressed.
You know, that reminds me of recent research about how even bacteria can communicate across species barriers. It's like there's this universal cellular language.
Yes, and this is where we need to challenge our assumptions. Why would an intelligence sophisticated enough to create all this incredible diversity? All these colors, shapes, movements, and individual expressions? Why would it need to create a prison?
That's a compelling point. It seems almost counterproductive.
Exactly. And here's where recent scientific discoveries become really important. We're finding more and more evidence that we're all connected across space and time, not just within species, but between them. The scope of this intelligence is literally boundless.
So, how do you explain all the control systems we see in our world? Governments, power structures, inequality. Don't these suggest some kind of restrictive system?
That's where we need to introduce this fascinating metaphor of the accelerator and brake. Just like any vehicle needs both to reach its destination safely, our collective journey through existence needs both forward momentum and restraining forces.
Could you break that down a bit more? How does that work in practice?
Think of it this way. When we're moving through space-time collectively, we naturally divide into these two functions. Some of us act as accelerators, pushing for progress and change, while others act as brakes, providing stability and caution. Neither is inherently good or bad. They're both essential parts of the journey.
That's quite different from the usual narrative of good versus evil, isn't it?
Absolutely. And this is where quantum physics offers some fascinating insights. Recent experiments in quantum mechanics show that the observer affects the observed, suggesting that our beliefs about reality might actually influence how we experience it.
So, if we believe we're in a prison,
We might actually be creating our own limitations. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. But here's what's really exciting. We're starting to understand that consciousness might be more like a field that permeates everything, rather than something confined to individual brains.
how does this relate to the recent discoveries about neuroplasticity and the brain's ability to change?
That's a brilliant connection. Neuroplasticity shows us that our brains are constantly rewiring themselves based on our experiences and beliefs. If we expand this to a universal scale, maybe reality itself has this same kind of plasticity, responding to and being shaped by collective consciousness.
These ideas seem to challenge a lot of traditional scientific and religious frameworks.
They absolutely do. And that's why there's often such resistance to these concepts. It requires a complete recalibration of our belief systems, seeing ourselves not as isolated individuals, but as individualized expressions of an infinite consciousness, all interconnected with every other form of life.
How do you think this understanding could change how we approach global challenges?
Well, if we truly understood our interconnectedness, we might approach problems like climate change or social inequality very differently. Instead of seeing them as someone else's problem, we'd recognize that they affect the entire web of life that we're part of.
That's quite a paradigm shift from our current competitive, individualistic worldview.
Exactly. And it requires something from us, too. It asks us to bring harmony to our local universe, our immediate sphere of influence. It's about practicing kindness and understanding in our daily interactions, recognizing that these ripple out through the entire web of consciousness.
So instead of fighting against perceived prison walls, we should focus
On understanding our role in this grand dance of collective consciousness. The conflicts we see in society, in politics, law, religion, they're all expressions of this interplay between acceleration and resistance. When we understand this, we can work with these forces rather than against them.
this conversation has given me a completely new perspective on freedom and consciousness.
And that's exactly the point. When we shift from seeing ourselves as prisoners to seeing ourselves as conscious participants in this vast, interconnected dance of life, everything changes, including how we relate to each other and to the challenges we face.
It's like we're all individual notes in a universal symphony.
Yes, and just like in a symphony, every note, every rest, every dynamic shift has its purpose. The beauty emerges from how all these elements work together, not from any single part dominating the others.
This has been quite the journey from prison planet to universal consciousness.
Indeed, it has. And maybe that's the most important takeaway, that our experience of reality has much more to do with our perspective than with any external prison walls, real or imagined. We're not trapped in a cosmic jail, we're participating in an infinite dance of consciousness, each playing our unique part in the universal symphony.
That feels like the perfect place to wrap up with an invitation to explore this mystery more deeply in our own lives. Now it's up to the listeners to study the essay for themselves. It will certainly help them to understand the concept of our collective reality in a deeper way. You can find the link in the text below the video.
Yes, I agree. We say goodbye from the mic, Sophia.
Goodbye, Phil.